You are now listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God, get away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Sean.
Saw's family.
And Derek.
Shazbud.
And in this episode, we'll be discussing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 from 1986, the follow-up to the classic horror film that was also directed by Tobe Hooper. But before we get to that, we'll go through some recent news and things we've been watching. And the news is going to be a little bit behind because we're recording this a lot earlier than usual because we are, or at least a few of us will be out of town this weekend because Sean will be shooting his segment for Volumes of Blood Horror Stories. So we're recording this on August 17th on a Wednesday night versus the weekend like we usually do. So there's a few news things out that we can talk about briefly. And some of them aren't really news at all, but apparently everyone thinks they are. So
we'll address them just to...
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of people talking about Kevin Bacon being interested in playing Freddy Krueger. And it's like, oh, okay, so if they're thinking about going to that franchise again, like he's an actor who actually has a little bit of a pedigree and, you know, is a good actor, has done a lot of different types of roles.
Well, too, he has a history with Friday the 13th.
Yeah, so he's been in a classic horror series.
Tremors.
So it's somebody that you're like, okay, I could see that working. It's, you know, they're talented, they, you know, big name, what have you. But then you look into the story, and it basically boiled down to a Twitter user, Betty Toxic, made a statement that was simply, if A Nightmare on Elm Street gets rebooted again, can we please somehow get at Kevin Bacon as Freddy? I think he'd be fantastic. And then Kevin Bacon retweeted it and said, I like the way you think, Betty. And that's kind of it. And everyone's talking as if it's almost a done deal. So
it's just a non-story. Like I get posting that to a forum and retweeting about it and maybe even throwing it on like your social media site. But for people to write articles about it with headlines that are like, you know, Kevin Bacon interested in playing Freddy is just like, we discussed it. We didn't even look at the article to see what the news actually was until right before this podcast, just so we could like be clear about it and not comment on it without knowing what the details were. But the reason none of us looked at it is because we just assumed it was some, you know, bullshit off the cuff remark, and it ended up being even less than that.
Yeah, it wasn't even like, I remember like a while back, that they had gotten Fede Alvarez, who directed the Evil Dead reboot and the upcoming movie Don't Breathe. He made some comment, or him or Sam Raimi or somebody made like an off the cuff comment at some convention about like an Evil Dead, like Ash and Mia team up. Mm-hmm. And then everybody kept making all these news stories about it. And it was literally like 15 seconds of them talking about it. And that's kind of what it was. So like these things always get blown up into these huge news stories when there's really not much of substance there. So, that's why, like, we didn't make a site post about this or anything because it's, you know, interesting choice. Somebody that I could see doing a good job as Freddy, but not a lot to the actual news there. Just kind of
And I wonder if they would spend that money on somebody like him. I'm not saying he pulls in, you know, he's not Robert Downey Jr. numbers.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's not somebody starving for a role, you know, that probably would already balloon their budget more than they would want.
Yeah, you're not getting him. You're not getting him for a bag of chips and $10. You're gonna have to.
Yeah, he's not doing this to like make his career. He would be doing it to have fun and make money.
So, Derek, I know you'd be okay with this choice. What if they put Jared Leto as Freddy?
I would find out who cast it and then take a baseball bat to him.
But then you would actually hate Freddy again. You know, he would be a villain.
Yeah, but it'd be like a really terrible villain, and you'd have a bunch of really unnecessary tattoos. And
what was it Jared Leto did at some award show? He's like, I dedicate this to all the starving children in the world.
Yeah.
Only thing I think I've really watched him in is Dallas Buyers Club that I can think of.
I mean, he's a good actor.
And he was good in that. But, you know, that may have been a role that played to his strengths because like, he was, you know, very suitable for it and very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, I think that Suicide Squad made a lot of people dislike him just because he portrayed such an iconic character in a way that rubbed a lot of people wrong. But he is, you know, a good actor, like Requiem for a Dream, back in 2000, which was 16 years ago. He was good in, and Lord of War. There's been a bunch of stuff I've seen him in over the years. I thought he was a good actor. It's just
Is Lord of War the Nick Cage movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was during the pre-crazy, super bad direct-to-video Cage.
Yeah, my friend let me borrow that a long time ago, and I remember liking that.
I have it on Blu-ray, I think, because I enjoyed it when I saw it back in the day. But yeah, so there's that bit of news. Then there's also, this is a audio podcast, so we can't show it to you, but they released an image of Pennywise from the upcoming adaptation of Stephen King's It. And so has everybody seen this image?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it looks like a lot more like classical clown,
like Bozo the Clown, or
but more medievalish.
What was the Wayne's brother clown on
Homie the Clown?
Homie the Clown. Let's see here. Does he have the? Yeah, he has the same style. You know that thing around the neck,
like the frilly.
Yeah,
it's like he stole the puffy shirt from Seinfeld and put
some. That's how they bring back Scary Movie with the Wayne's brothers. They do an It version with Homie the Clown. That would blow up.
Yeah, I would watch that.
I would watch the hell out of that.
I'm a fan of the new one. I mean, I saw it. I remember. Here's the thing about the movie It. Like, I think it's a movie.
The show or TV movie.
The series.
Yeah. It's like a TV movie.
TV movie. Yeah.
Anyway, like when I was a kid, it originally scared the shit out of me. But even as a kid, like this third act or whatever was really, really lame. So I hope that in this movie they can make the third act not so lame. Because it was really effective, like the first.
Yeah.
Because it was like a 3-hour long.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think I've watched that fully ever. Like I remember watching it as a kid when it was like on. But of course, as a kid, like, you know what I mean? You're not like, ooh, I'm waiting for part 2 to come on or whatever. Yeah, I don't think I ever finished that. I feel like I remember watching the first half.
Whenever I watched it, it was always like on USA or on AMC during the Fear Fest or Halloween. So it was just all of it at one time.
Yeah, but it was 3 hours.
Just the first half of the movie is incredibly effective for me when I was younger because it really just scared the crap out of me. But then, like I said, even when I was like 10, is that second act was just not good,
Maybe that's why I don't remember it too. Maybe that's when I dropped off watching it. I think
because not a spoiler, but they use an inhaler to get rid of it.
Well, I think I think pretty much everybody remembers the scene of like Pennywise in the sewer and grabbing that little kid. Like that's an iconic, very creepy, effective sequence. I don't remember a whole lot beyond that. Like I've watched it before, like the end.
Oh, there's like a really good boiler room scene, and there's like another scene with where it lures them into different places was pretty good. But like I said, just when they're all adults and they're combating or like fighting with it, it just
yeah. So I don't have anything necessarily against this upcoming reboot or remake. The image they've showed from it. I mean, it's nothing that makes me get super excited, but it's also like, okay, at least they didn't do just like a straight rip-off of what they did with Tim Curry. They're doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, and like the costume designers out there talking about it, so it's like cool that they are putting enough stock in somebody to develop this vision. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just somebody throwing something out there. Like the costume designer was out there just, I'm not saying defending it, but he was discussing the choices with it, So there's apparently a lot of thought into this.
Yeah, so
real quick, I didn't realize this, but Homie the Clown, did you know he was an ex-con who works as a clown for his parole agreement?
It's been quite a while since I watched In Living Color.
That makes like all the sense in the world now based on, his character.
Homie don't play that.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite In Living Color characters.
And I mean, didn't somebody from Duck Dynasty co-op that thing? Homie, don't play that or something.
Oh, I don't know.
I thought I remember that there's something in more recent pop culture history where they say "Homie, don't play that," and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, it's from that." It's like, no, dude, it's from Homie the Clown. You idiot. So that was the Pennywise. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. Then there's also just another bit of news. Mark Duplass confirms they're working on Creep 2, which was the sequel to the found footage movie that was available via Netflix that really was something that was only two characters mostly, or I think almost completely just two characters. That was Mark Duplass and Patrick Brice, who was the director. And it was a found footage movie that was, I guess it's kind of horror or thriller-ish. But, we did a podcast on it a while back and, enjoyed it, but it wasn't like anything that stood out as like a best of or anything. So they're making a sequel.
Have they ever done a sequel before?
The Duplass brothers? Or Duplass? I don't think I remember them ever doing a sequel. I think everything's been like one-off indie projects that are moderately budgeted, and
which I guess most of those projects really don't lend themselves well to sequels to something like this.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think that this is a film that people are just wanting a sequel to.
They said the Creep films are supposed to be a trilogy, so I'll see how that works out. But I mean, that first Creep movie, like I haven't really seen the details on what camera they shot out and stuff, but I couldn't imagine that cost that much money to make.
Well, especially if they could pre-sell it to Netflix or something. You know what I mean? Like,
well, they made it, and then I think they screened it at festivals and couldn't get distribution, and then it got picked up by Blumhouse Tilt, who was able to sell it to Netflix.
Yeah.
And Blumhouse Tilt is the brand of Blumhouse that does the alternative releases for stuff. So like they had Creep and Hush go straight to Netflix, and The Green Inferno, which had a theatrical run. So they're the branch of Blumhouse that tries to market stuff that's not super marketable, I guess. Try to find alternate ways to get it released. But like I said, I couldn't imagine.
So it truly is the Blumpkin house.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that Creep
hard sells.
I couldn't imagine the first Creep cost that much to make, because all you really needed was a camera, a location. You had basically two actors, like the sound mixing and stuff. But
yeah, they're always very frugal with their budgets anyway. They're
because remember
infamous for that.
Hush was made for $70,000 reportedly, which still seems a bit low to me, because just basically
or a bit high because they had nothing in it.
Well, just the crew, the camera, the location, all that stuff, I would think would cost more than that, because the 40-year-old Virgin costs like $30 million to make or something. Which really?
But it had Paul Rudd, Steve Carell, and a bunch of
Hush could have been a thing where but all of them weren't big names then.
Bigger than anybody that was in Hush, though.
Well, you just understand, a lot of stuff, you see these budgets for it, and you're like, really? It costs that much? And that one,
it could have been a thing where all of the crew was and cast was, non-paid.
Well,
then that all went into just, I'm talking about Hush, not
40-year-old Virgin.
Creep. Yeah, not 40-year-old Virgin.
Yeah, but so Creep 2, I'm interested to see what they do with it, because I didn't really know that it lent itself to a trilogy. But if they have an idea, an arc for some of the characters, then I'd be interested to see where that goes and what they do next. So we'll keep an eye out on that.
Hopefully they'll turn it on its head, that concept, just because Creep alone is a different type of found footage film, especially when you consider it like a horror film. So hopefully they continue twisting that as much as the first one was twisted from kind of maybe what you would expect out of a found footage film that's in the quote unquote horror genre.
Yep. So last bit of news before we get into the other stuff is apparently John Turturro is filming a Big Lebowski spinoff right now for his character Jesus, and it's not being directed by the Coens, and it's kind of weird. So it's supposed to be taking its plot from a 1974 comedy. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Les Valseuses, Valseuses, which is...
Is it French?
I believe so.
Glancing at the title, it looked French.
And that movie is about two thieves who compete to give a woman her first orgasm. And it's supposed to have Susan Sarandon involved and some others, and of course John Turturro. So it's interesting to hear that this is something that's happening and that they're taking this approach to it. I'll be interested to see what comes out of it. But
yeah, I mean, he's talked about that, doing a spinoff with his character for a long time, but it's just interesting that he's latched onto that so hard. I mean, granted, it's a cult hit that few films rival, but at the same time, he's not an actor who has only done that role. You know, he's had so many other
Well, he's currently in
successes.
that HBO series, The Night Of, so he's on stuff.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that he is still like this many years later, just like hanging on to that. So I'm, for that reason alone, I'm interested. But you know, because the Coens aren't even involved, that makes you cautiously optimistic, or you know, I don't even know if it's optimistic, but you know what I mean. It's like,
Well, too, apparently,
I could really care less until it comes out, and if they say it's good, then I'll be happy and I'll watch it. But other than that, don't really have any big expectations either way.
so the original movie was, according to Roger Ebert, the most misogynistic. I can't talk tonight. So the movie came out in '74.
Misogynistic.
Yeah, Roger Ebert called it the most misogynistic movie he could remember, or that he remembered. So that in and of itself, you know, being stated in the time, like in the '70s, somebody calling it that misogynistic back then, like you can only imagine what it's going to look like today. So, and then there's like this, the pederast and the sexual offender stuff. They talked about his character in Big Lebowski. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, Big Lebowski is great. So, and I wouldn't think that I think the Coen brothers wouldn't want him to make something if it's going to be terrible. But
Oh yeah.
but then he also, I believe, John Turturro had claimed that the character of Jesus is something he came up with prior to being in the movie. So,
Yes. Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. But apparently it's shooting now, so we'll probably hear more about it sometime soon. But then last bit of news is something on our end, is that if you want to see our short film Hazard, the first time you can see it will be at Days of the Dead in Louisville, Kentucky. Friday, September 2nd at the midnight screenings. You'll be able to see it there, which will be the first time it's shown anywhere, and then it won't be seen again for a couple months. So it'll be October before it's shown anywhere again, or late October.
I think then we lock it away for 100 years, like that Robert Rodriguez film. Who's in that? Who starred in that?
I don't remember, but if it's anything similar to his recent output, like I don't think too many people are going to be uncovering that in 100 years from now. Weird days. Yeah, but you can see Hazard then. There's a teaser we put out for it. It's on Facebook, YouTube. I believe we have Vimeo too, so you can see that teaser. But it'll be released for the first time anywhere, Days of the Dead. And we may get it into some other festivals after then. But it won't hit the web until later in October. But
Yeah.
so you can see that. And then the Volumes of Blood horror stories, that'll be debuting, I believe, October 28th in Owensboro. So,
And I haven't shot it yet, so it's this weekend. The pressure's on, and we've changed locations like just this week, so I've got to refigure a bunch of stuff out. It's going to be an empty house we have to furnish, and we're scrambling. So,
and then Kevin Bacon retweeted saying he'd be down for being in it. So
yeah, so he may show up this weekend, or may not.
As Freddy Krueger, and then he
So
said
this is going to be a bizarre shoot then.
yeah.
It's going to be. I mean, granted, I've planned as much as possible, but I don't want to like say like, oh yeah, it's not going to be good, but you know what I mean? It's like you kind of like try to, I guess, reach for as far as you can to make it as good as you can. And, you know, there's just logistics things and just practical things that we can't do. So like I've already had to start cutting back stuff like, okay, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. But, you know, it's still, I mean, I'm still hopeful that it's going to turn out just fine. You know what I mean? Like I'm excited to do it. It's just one of those things where it's, you build something in your mind, and if things start falling off, you just think, oh, it could have been this. I could have done this. But at the same time, like, I think, you know, this crew is apparently really good. Never worked with them, but I've heard really good things from everybody that's worked with them, because there's been like several different directors that have done segments for this that I kind of like know through this or just knew prior to this. And everybody's said nothing but great things about them. So, you know, I'm sure we'll get there, have a good time. We're having some very long shoot days, but
Well, too, like
I'll be interested to see what comes out of it.
in the world of like indie filmmaking and stuff. Like, so when we shot Hazard, the original plan was to shoot over the course of 2 weekends, to shoot, you know, Saturday, Sunday, and then the next Saturday and Sunday for stuff we missed or stuff we still needed. And then that kind of got changed a little bit, where we only had some people for one day, so it became shoot as much as you can one day, which is, I got out of bed at 8 a.m. and went back to bed at about 6 a.m. So
Yeah.
a very long day.
Yeah.
And then
that's going to be like what? After credits, maybe 10 minutes?
yeah, it'll be right around 10 minutes or so. So
And I feel like this will be like between 8 and 10 minutes. So it's going to be like the same situations, only.
well, too, you also, on ours, the crew basically consisted of the non-actors. It was basically, so you were director of photography, I was director, then I also served as my own like script supervisor and assistant director, and then Derek was there doing production assistant stuff, helping us
Everything,
move things
yeah.
around and all that.
Acting too.
Yeah, your wife Nicole was there and helped out with things. But it was basic, and then Arnie was there running audio. So beyond that, it was all just actors pretty much. So at least there'll be more people there for this.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully that'll make things go more smoothly, and it'll just have to be what it is because there won't be time for reshoots on this. Considering one, they don't put it in the budget for any of those segments, I don't think, and so it'll have to be completed, before October really, and that includes sending it off to be scored and everything. So it's going to be like a mad dash from. This week.
If we didn't do reshoots on Hazard, we'd be screwed because some of the one key scene need to be redone later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I'm like,
but granted, we also had one effects person, Corey, who was acting, also did the effects. So we had one person acting and effects versus having somebody dedicated. So yeah, we'll see. But we'll post whatever we can from that because I'll be there to help get some behind the scenes footage. So we'll post whatever we can from that sometime soon.
And that first one is out on DVD and Blu-ray and stuff. You can buy it. So I recommend checking it out if you like horror anthologies. So yeah, I'm hopeful for it. It's going to be fun, going to be experience, going to learn some stuff, and hopefully something good will come out of it.
Yep. So I think that's all the stuff we have. So we can move into briefly discussing any things we've been watching before we get into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I have not really had a chance to watch much of anything since the last podcast we recorded this past Saturday. I did rewatch a few episodes of Stranger Things just to kind of watch it again. It's like, okay, so the first time I watched it, you have all the nostalgia stuff and like the music and all the references. It's like, do I still enjoy it? And, I still enjoy it. I think it's a well-made show. Got, great visuals. The music I downloaded. You can buy the album now or the volume 1 of the soundtrack via iTunes. So I bought that and I've listened to it. So
people are, I from the first time I watched it, I said on the podcast, loved the pilot episode, thought it was phenomenal. And I really liked the series. Like I thought it was really good, but people are really, really hot on that show on the internet. Like there's been few shows, that have kind of taken on this fandom this quick.
Well, too,
I guess because there's so many touchstones to it that have kind of tapped into people's youth and movies they liked and stuff.
Yeah, because it references so many things. But there's also the backlash of a handful of people or different websites or people we follow on Facebook or Twitter or whatever who are like, I don't get why everybody likes it. It's not good. And then there's the backlash of people who don't understand why people like it.
I think it's good, and I'm not like trying to be one of those people, but I was like, God damn. People are just posting about this nonstop, which is cool that they like it. But I'm like, it's really good, but man, I don't know if it's like that good. This isn't the, end all be all TV show, in my opinion. But I saw somebody Instagram a post. Did you see that title generator where you can type stuff in and it makes it the Stranger Things?
Yeah.
Font. Did you see that, Derek?
No.
Yeah. So basically, I think you go to a website, you type in your name, and it'll say it like the title screen on Stranger Things. And somebody made an Instagram post, and it was that, but it said, "Move on to something else." And I'm like excited for season 2, but I'm like, I don't know. There's plenty of other things out there right now to preoccupy my time with shows. You know what I mean? And movies and stuff.
That site is makeitstranger.com that you go to where you can type in the names. But it's one of those things.
And I'm not knocking anybody. It's just interesting to see, like, I don't know. It's really good, but man, the fandom for this has just exploded.
I think too, though, one thing that kind of puts this in, like, to kind of shed light on exactly how this works is Netflix is very good about putting a show out that blows up on social media. And I think that this is the first one that's been aimed so squarely at the demographic that that we fall into and some of the other sites and people we are, fall into.
true.
So they see all this, there's a light shined on this now because they're seeing all the people that they're friends with talk about it versus they're not in the same group of people to talk about Orange is the New Black or these other, or Making a Murderer, because those were huge phenomenons too. So I think this has been like the fandom has existed for other shows of this nature. It's just that since it's in the same demographic as a lot of people that listen to our podcast or that, our general age and stuff, they're now seeing all this fandom. And then some people get pissed off about it because they didn't love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why does everybody like this? But then, like, it's not that everyone's freaking out over this show. I mean, a lot of people are loving it. I think it's just more the demographics that you would see are the ones talking about it versus these other properties where it's more different groups of people. Like Making a Murderer was huge when it came out. And
part of me wonders too, like some of the people that are so in love with it. And again, I'm not knocking it because I really like that show too. Like, yeah, it's been one of my favorite recent shows, and I don't know how long as far as like brand new shows this year. But some of me wonders, like some of the people that are that into it, is it because they actually maybe aren't super aware of a lot of things it pulls from, so it seems super original? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like the telekinesis, like, you know what I mean? That feels like a little bit like Akira, and just like there's like a lot of little things it pulls from and puts it together beautifully. But I'm wondering if people think it's like this super original concoction. Well,
yeah, I mean, it's funny too because I've talked to some people recently who are, not horror fanatics and, different age groups. And I'll mention something about like Evil Dead, and they're like, oh yeah, that one from like a couple years ago, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, what about the other one? Like, what, there's more? Yeah. It's like, oh, the original. And then like, there was something else I mentioned, and somebody was I had some video that had some music from Halloween in it. And like, oh, you like that Rob Zombie movie? It's like, oh, no.
Yeah. And see, if I wasn't, super aware or had seen a lot of the films that this pulls from, then I probably would think also it's like the greatest thing I have ever seen. You know what I mean? Like one of the greatest shows I've ever seen ever. But maybe I think they nailed it. Like for what they did, it couldn't really have been done better. The way they put things together and drew from these things, but at the same time, they're drawing from so many things that by that nature, I can't. You know what I mean? Like it only allows me to love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can never love this like I would love like a John Carpenter film or something like that. Just because it's like, okay, you drew from it and you did an awesome job, but it's not. To be fair, it's not the soul of the show by itself.
To be fair, though, a lot of those John Carpenter movies drew from other things too. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So Derek, you still haven't watched that yet, have you? Stranger Things?
No, I have not.
Come on, Derek, you need to watch it.
I don't know, but there's been other stuff on TV lately, so I haven't had time to watch.
Like BoJack Horseman.
I was gonna say you can fit it in between your BoJack rewatches.
Well, that too, and like I was like, I'm not gonna watch any of the Olympics, and I've watched like every single bit of it I could. So.
Well, that green, green algae-filled pool is the thing of nightmares.
I mean, that's a good excuse. It only happens once every 4 years. Might as well enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, and it's like one of the few channels that I have. So it's like, oh, okay, I've just watched it nonstop almost.
So, did anybody else watch anything before we get into TCM2?
Yeah, it hasn't been much time, and I've actually forgot we were doing this podcast tonight. So I was like starting to watch some of the special features. I literally only watched one. Because last year when this film came out, not when it came out, but this time last year, I was writing up a retrospective video for it, and I started writing a script that I found, but I thought I'd written earlier this year to release for the 30th anniversary, but it's actually dated last August, and I just never finished that piece because I was wanting to shoot some stuff for it and everything. So I meant to watch more of those special features before we recorded this because I think I may have watched them last year, but I don't remember any of it. And then I watched a little bit of Hot Fuzz again because I love that movie.
Yep. So Derek, did you watch anything?
Olympics.
Oh. So are we good to move into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 now?
Yep. Are you there, Derek?
Yeah, I'm here. I had to run out of the room real quick.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So we will move into our discussion of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. We will have full spoilers because this movie was released 30 years ago. or almost 30 years ago. It was August 22nd, 1986.
And I think the title kind of describes two elements of the movie, but there's really one. There's a lot of chainsaw. There's not much massacre.
Well, and two, this movie was rated X.
That's a good point.
In 1986, it starred Dennis Hopper, Caroline Williams, Jim Sidow, Bill Moseley.
Real quick, out of the gate, my favorite scene of the entire movie, because I just got to say
Full spoilers.
Full spoilers. I didn't enjoy this movie at all. But the one scene I really enjoyed is when Dennis Hopper, who's like the sheriff character. Okay, pretty much this is kind of Rob Zombie 1.0. Like, this is his source material for like the Devil's Rejects.
Or House of 1,000 Corpses, Devil's Rejects.
Definitely Devil. Yeah, both of them, but definitely Devil's Rejects for like the story of the sheriff on revenge and stuff. But anyway, like the sheriff goes in, or whatever he is, goes into the chainsaw store and grabs like 3 chainsaws. And then the guy's like, well, if you want to, the guy has him, you can try him out. So there's like a log outside, like a log, like a big tree outside that you can practice chainsaws on. And he's like welling into it with the chainsaw, and the old man's like having a semi-orgasm watching him do it. He's like, yeah, that's right.
I mean, yeah, that's a really good scene.
That was just a strange scene. And it's like one of the ones that stuck with me. But there are so many similarities with this and House of 1,000 Corpses and Devil's Rejects.
Well, like, so to this movie, the budget was much higher than the original Texas Chainsaw. The budget was estimated at $4.7 million. In the U.S., it grossed $8 million. So it had way more money behind it, but it made way less money. But I think that part of it is it's tonally so much different from the original. The original almost feels like kind of like a snuff film, or, you know, it's kind of like very low key, and you know, after the kind of goofy stuff at the beginning is played pretty straight and very serious, whereas this is more of a comedy horror that goes in like, so the original, they're all just in a house. That's the setting is just a house. And this, they have this like intricate underground compound with all this stuff.
And they're doing chili cook-offs.
Yeah, I love the chili cook-off, the way that starts. But for me, I almost equate it to, the tone jump is not even like Evil Dead 1 to Evil Dead 2 or Evil Dead 2 to Army of Darkness. It's like Evil Dead 1 to Army of Darkness. You know, it's or even more so than that.
But yeah, I was going to say it's even more than that. It's like it went from being Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 to being like, I don't know, Step Brothers.
Which, for the record, I love, because, you know, again, like redoing the same thing, you know, just this is like Alien to Aliens as far as one being a horror film and the other being
something,
you know,
different.
something else, like an evolution of it.
Love to see a John C. Reilly Leatherface. Like,
he's already got the hair. Like his natural hair.
Just the noises that would be made while that was going on.
But I would want him to be wearing a John C. Reilly mask.
Yeah.
Like,
it would be really entertaining.
Just a Steve Leatherface.
John C. Reilly, who is a regular listener to the podcast, will listen to this and then tweet that we have good ideas.
And then we can confirm he's going to be the new face of Leatherface.
But so Leatherface was played by Bill Johnson. So different actor than the Gunnar Hansen. So a little bit different take on Leatherface.
Yeah,
I love his dance. Like, that's my favorite thing, the Leatherface dance. When he like, holds the chainsaw up in the air and just shakes around.
And the scene where, like, okay, the lead actress in the movie, her dialogue was like 3 dialogues and then just a bunch of because that's
Stretch.
Yeah, I liked her though. I liked her a lot.
No, I liked her, but it's just like I wish they could have retroactively go back and make the role for her like a little better.
Well, it's one of those things where you look at a lot of horror films from, you know, eras past, and you know, she was very much a scream queen in the vein that she just screamed a lot. And you look at today's world, if that gets released, they'd be like, why'd you make this character like as weak as you did? And she spent most of her time just screaming.
But at the same time, she prevails, you know, at the end, and kind of, you know, I don't know. She still kind of like becomes the strongest person in the film.
Yeah, and unlike the Jessica Biel version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, she picks up the goddamn chainsaw.
That's what I'm saying.
She
Like
doesn't
by the
step
end,
over
she's
it.
she's doing the Leatherface dance on top of that weird mountain, and
Yeah.
it's like this looks like a like a Tim Burton rendition of Texas, which I kind of love.
With less Johnny Depp and that one lady that's in all of his movies.
Helena Bonham Carter, his ex-wife.
Yeah.
Speaking of stretch, like I love authentic Southern actresses. Like
Yeah, she does have it.
when somebody forces it, or is even if they're not even authentic, and even if they sound fine, there's a big difference. So like her, and then like Holly Hunter, she was recently in Batman versus Superman. When I saw her pop up in that, I was like, oh, I love her. Like she was awesome in Network. I love those characters, like the authentic Southern woman that is very smart. You know what I mean? And kind of a badass in ways.
Yeah, but I think we've talked about this before. Like, I think the hardest accent for anybody to do correctly is a Southern accent, because like you can get by with a lot of them. But I guess too, though, it's just from us being like, not that Kentucky's like super South, but there are some places in Kentucky that people have some heavy Southern accents, and and being in Tennessee and Georgia and stuff too, just doing different things. But just like, I don't know, when you hear someone faking it, it takes you out of it.
Yeah.
Hers was definitely legit.
Authentic, and she was great. Like she didn't have to feel like she was portraying a character. She just was that character kind of because of that. Because she was cast so well, and that was very important to the film, being Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, and Dennis Hopper's all right. And like his character is a little different, but
the thing that is I want to say disappointing, that I wish would have been done better, is the showdown at the end, like their chainsaw fight. It's parts of it are a little limp when they're just kind of slapping the blades together.
Yeah,
it's very it's anticlimactic.
Yeah,
compared to what you were expecting in your mind, Dennis Hopper to do with dual wielding chainsaws.
Well, I think another thing too, though, is this movie, and this goes back to a lot of different movies, and especially the past couple, because we've done The Fly and American Werewolf in London, and this is an example of a movie to me that drug so much.
It doesn't. The minute to minute is not strong,
because the chainsaw, the actual part where they like duel off, is in the last like 10 minutes of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard to watch.
I was writing that retrospective because I do like this movie. I think I would watch it over and over again compared to the first one, just because I like the weird. I like the weird.
There is a
world
lot of weird stuff in it.
Yeah, it's just a weird movie, but good. Bill Moseley's awesome in it. And it's pretty it's a little disturbing. Him like scratching his head and eating it and stuff. There's some stuff in there that's just kind of like, oof. It's a little hard to stomach when you actually think about what is going on.
I wish they could go back and recast like the dad of the family with the guy that played Ernest, because I think it would have made it way better.
I do like the dad though. He was just so
he was
so
good.
weird.
Yeah.
But having said that, I totally agree. Like watching it the other night too, I noticed myself checking my phone several times, and like for me watching The Fly, I didn't look at my phone once.
Oh yeah, I didn't even look at it.
But this, I was like, I was checking my phone quite a bit, and I like this movie, But yeah, you're totally right. Like the minute to minute stuff is, it kind of is not as tight as it could be.
Well, I think it's something too that like with Sam Raimi's approach and different things is like, you take Evil Dead 2, because I think these are in the same vein, and for most of the movie you had Bruce Campbell by himself. Mm-hmm. Bruce Campbell is not like a spectacular actor, but they put him in the right situations and let kind of body him take over by like throwing himself and all that stuff. Whereas in this movie, it just had a bunch of bizarre stuff in it,
Yeah.
But I still think my favorite scene is just like the chainsaw part where the old man's like, "Yeah, you cut that wood." Like it was just so weird,
Well, too,
like you would expect that out of like a David Lynch film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just. Yeah, it was.
In this franchise, so the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So with Friday the 13th, they got goofier in the later installments, and Jason Lives is kind of meta, and kind of paved the way for something like Scream, really. But this movie, like the Texas Chainsaw franchise until they did the reboot in whenever it was the early 2000s, like 2002 or 3 or whatever, with Jessica Biel. The franchise up to that point was the original film that made a lot of money. It was considered a classic. The second one that was considered a cult classic that didn't make enough money to justify the budget they gave it, but it's gone on to have a cult following over the years. And then the sequels after that were very poorly rated and like kind of direct to video type stuff that didn't really do much at the theater, like Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 got pretty bad reviews. Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, which had Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, they both want that movie erased from the face of the planet, based on what they've said in recent years. So it's
I did see him tweet that he would revisit that franchise.
So it's like a series where I think after the first one, the later entries really didn't bear much resemblance, even though the second one was the same director. I think that the first one's kind of lightning in the bottle, and then they've made, I'm sure they're fans of all the sequels, and I'm not knocking anybody who liked them. I'm just thinking that, they didn't really live up to that first film. Not that, the Halloween sequels or anything lived up to the first one, but they at least were in the same wheelhouse, kind of.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like massive
I think
departures.
this was smartly a totally different film, so it didn't compare to, once you kind of accept it what it is, and which people have now at this point, it's a lot easier to like this film alongside of it, where if it was too close to it, then people would clearly be like, no, well, this one's just better, and I don't care about the other one. They're so different that I think they both have value to them, at least.
Yeah, to me, they almost feel like just independent movies from each other, because like the setups are so different. And while you do have one actual, because like Leatherface, it felt different with the one in this one, because this one felt, just goofier than the original. So outside
it was almost like a Saturday morning cartoon version of Texas Chainsaw, like the family, you know what I mean? Like Leatherface was, not really killing people. He was just like stopped from killing her and everything.
Well, that was also another bizarre scene, because she's like, "Are you really good at what you do?" And then he's like phallically using the
chainsaw on her leg.
Yeah. And that was weird. And then I don't know.
He's like, I accidentally cut it off with the chainsaw, so when I touch a chainsaw to the nub, that's kind of like I'm extending. I don't know. It's just it's kind of interesting that they only had really one character return from the original, which was Jim Sadow is the cook. So you have one character really return.
Well, he had two in Leatherface, but it was just
the same actor returning. And his character wasn't played all that much differently between the two films. But I think the first one, he was a little bit more sinister, as opposed to this one, he's a little bit more
we didn't even talk. Hold on. This is my fault. The intro to this movie is by far one of the worst intros.
You don't like it?
I'm glad that guy got his face cut in half.
Oh, yes, I am too. But I love it just because it's almost surreal, just the way it was shot, like Leatherface, on the thing.
No, I liked the I liked the bridge. But I mean, those guys were like, oh my! Like usually, you kind of feel bad for them. You're like, I wish more had happened to them because they were so awful. No, it was pretty cool when they did the Leatherface thing. Like they shot it, and it was just like the dead body they had around them for a lot of the movie. But that was cool.
Like a puppet.
Yeah, but like those guys were like the biggest douchebags ever.
I mean, I like how their stories kind of was interwoven. You know what I mean? I feel like it's. Yeah. They made the connection in the first one, Dennis Hopper being, I guess, the uncle of the guy in the wheelchair from the first one.
Was this the only one Dennis Hopper was in?
Yes.
I mean,
so he never like made a cameo in any of the other ones?
No, I mean, he supposedly died in this one, so.
Yeah, but we know how these movies work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you don't, unless you see somebody's head get chopped off on screen, they could easily come back.
No. That doesn't matter either. We've seen that happen in movies too.
Or it could be his brother, Beerfest.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Where his twin brother could show up and just everything's just the same.
Well, too, that
was a great plot.
It has to be noted that this movie was released by Canon Films, which kind of leads into the type of film it was and the tone, I think, just based on the other types of things they released over the years. And two, just quickly looking through IMDb, so the Chop Top is not the same character from the first film that was Hitchhiker.
Yeah.
No, Hitchhiker died.
They claim that the corpse they had, like that Leatherface played around with and stuff, was the hitchhiker from the first film.
Didn't he get hit by a truck at the end of the first?
Yes, I believe so. I don't
Because like I hate to say this, but like the original Texas Chainsaw, the remake, and all the Devil's Rob Zombie stuff just all blends in because they're the same movie. So like I can't even remember
you have
stuff that
like so you have like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, and then you have all those movies that were derivative of them, and all those things do kind of blend together over time, where it's kind of hard to remember and separate them all out unless you watch them all a lot. Because like, you know, out of all the horror franchises, the big, you know, franchises, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I, you know, appreciate the first one, but I still enjoy like the Evil Dead or Halloween or a lot of those other series more. So
it
you know,
seems
it's like the Southern Fried Slasher, or you know what I mean, or
Yeah.
a Texas style slasher that kind of makes those all kind of feel, you know, as far as a separate subgenre than your traditional slasher film.
yeah, because it's in Texas.
Yep, and they got that, you know,
yeah, but the hitchhiker is killed by a semi in the first film.
Yeah,
So
I knew he
supposedly it's
died.
his corpse is the one that they have in the film in part 2. So because I saw somebody was asking that question. It's one of those things where you don't if you don't watch those movies religiously, you'd be like, oh, is that the same character? But no.
yeah.
But too, like we were before you started this podcast, like we are discussing, like you know that's Bill Moseley the second he starts talking.
Yeah.
Or I guess if you hadn't, you know, in the era, if you didn't know who he was before then, he was a very distinctive character. And if you were to then later watch House of Thousand Corpses or Devil's Rejects, you're like, oh, that's the same guy. Just based on
He's played
voice
the
alone.
same. Yeah, it's kind of the same character that, you know.
Yeah.
It's just funny to me, like, having watched this, you realize, like, this must have, like, when Rob Zombie watched this, you ever seen the commercials on TV? I don't know what it's for, but the people, their heads blow up and the purple smoke comes out. Like, that's what happened to Rob Zombie when he watched this movie. It was just like, what?
Oh, snap, son.
Yeah. And, like, Macho Man came through the TV and was like, oh, and it was just, you know, just life-changing.
Get ready for 31.
Because you do see a lot of where Rob Zombie's work has gone in this movie.
Yeah.
And
But
kind of the
it's-
quirky, goofy characters.
Yeah.
It's not really scary by any of the stretch of the imagination. There's gore, but
it's like, with,
not
like,
really
House-
like the cringeworthy type, like the torture porn
Well,
stuff.
Dennis Hopper shoves a chainsaw up the dad's butt, and he's talking about how it got rid of his hemorrhoids, so he doesn't have to go to the hospital. And he chapped his balls a little bit or something, you know. And it's like, what?
You know, you talked about Bill Moseley. It made me think of his first scene in this, which is great when he's at the radio station. But the jump scare in that scene is so awesome when Leatherface comes out of the racks or whatever where the albums are at. Like, that is an awesome jump scare, and it works so well. And it's kind of like your first. Granted, he was in the opening sequence, but this is like the first time he's threatening somebody you actually like. And it's just so well done. Even when I know it's coming, it's just like boom. Yeah, I love that jump scare in it because the film's not full of those, so there's just like a couple moments like that work so well.
Another thing too is I feel bad for the guy that worked at the radio station for her, or for Sketch. What was her name? Stretch. Yeah, because he got hit in the head with a hammer for like 20 minutes and didn't die.
And then his face carved off.
And then like, it was mostly alive and still had like patches of skin missing, and
they tortured him, man. You know, somebody had to get tortured though that you kind of liked, because otherwise there would have been none of that.
And then they brought the old grandpa back, and he was still alive somehow.
Yeah, who looks like what's his name from Prometheus?
Wayland.
Wayland, yeah.
And then one thing I thought was
Pierce.
interesting at the end was when Stretch gets the chainsaw, it's from the grandma. And apparently she was still alive before she took it, and her taking the chainsaw killed the grandma. And it's like, how are these people living? They're like, their like skin's like petrified. They're like dust. They look like mummies, and they're still alive.
Yeah, so like we said, like so Stretch's character, she does live, and it's kind of like the inversion of the first film where she succeeds and then acts as if she is Leatherface and is probably gone crazy. So you kind of have like that reversal at the end.
but she made a cameo as a reporter in the third or fourth one. So she probably because I think it was the third. I can't remember.
Let's see. And then she was in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Yeah, she's in a couple other things. She was in something else, I'm sure.
Yeah, she was.
I can't remember. I looked.
She was an uncredited reporter in Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3.
I was watching. I had time to watch one special feature because it. Like a half hour before we started, you're like, "Oh, you still good tonight?" So I went up there and watched one of them, and she talks about like this film, like she, owes her career to this movie, and it is the reason why she moved out to LA, met her husband, and got a lot of different roles. So obviously, this was a very good thing for her.
Yes. So, and 2, I'll put it in the show notes. You can watch this for free on YouTube right now. So, and it's officially from the studio, so you're not pirating anything. So, put a link to that.
Cool.
Because it has commercials and stuff in it. But so you can watch.
Actually, they're going to put money in your bank account for having watched it.
So you can watch, if you haven't watched it in a while, you can go check it out in addition to listening to this podcast and just take a look at it. And it's in HD.
I'm on Paramount's page because I searched for it and it says making me rent it.
Well, I watched it for free.
Yeah,
I watched it.
Yeah, I watched it today on YouTube for free. And it was Paramount because it had their little logo on it and everything. The entire time you watched it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I just...
And it wasn't...
I see it now, yeah. Paramount... Okay, so the Paramount Vault.
Yeah.
It's free on there. The Paramount just regular page costs $2.99.
Which is nonsensical. Because it's free. When I watched it, too, I use my Chromecast. So there were no commercials or anything. Because there's like commercial breaks in here. Like if you look at the playtime. But there were none when I watched my Chromecast. So
sweet. I think they got Death Wish 3. A lot of good stuff on here.
So you can
Death Wish 3 is phenomenal.
I guess they got some of the Canon library, because that's when Canon had the Death Wish franchise.
Yeah, so basically, just to summarize what I think I've heard during the course of this podcast, is Derek was not a big fan of it. I thought that, it's an interesting departure and something that, if you haven't watched it, it's worth watching at least once or twice, but it's nothing I'm going to revisit all that often.
I feel like this. If you love any Rob Zombie film ever produced in the known universe, you will love this movie because it is like the source material. It is the Bible for whence he wrote his movies on,
Yeah, or just stylistically, it's, like I said,
it's the same.
It's kind of
it's the same.
So it has kind of like an irreverent humor style to it with like detached characters you're supposed to identify with more really than the quote unquote good guys, and that like the family dynamics of like Chop Top and Leatherface and everything are supposed to be more interesting to you really than like the Sheriff Lefty, because he really wasn't a very good sheriff in this and took forever to get down like to try to save the Stretch, and like wasn't very effective. Like the sheriff in Devil's Rejects was at least more effective. He was a little bit more singularly focused, but like similar motivation in trying to get retribution for a fallen family member. But I enjoyed. I don't know about enjoy, but like this movie's entertaining to some extent. Like it's like I said though, it's kind of slow at points. And if you're not into the aesthetic and the look of it and the kind of tone from the first 15 minutes, it doesn't really get any better. There's long stretches in the middle where not a lot happens. And it all kind of
crescendos. And it's not like The Fly where the characters are strong enough to carry it on their own, or like Werewolf in London.
They're not. Their strengths lie on their quirks.
You have Stretch like hiding in a room full of dead bodies, and then the goofy ass family dynamics of the Firefly Clan 1.0, if you want to link it to Rob Zombie, and that you have the cook and Chop Top and Leatherface, and then Grandpa and all that stuff. Like the set design is really over designed. Like the first one, they're just in a house, and it makes sense. The sequel, it's all kind of over designed underground catacomb that even if they just found the property and built that, they would still have spent a lot of money to get all the stuff needed to do that, which is interesting. But yeah, so I think it's something like if you haven't ever seen it, it's worth checking out. but it's not really at the top of any of my list or anything I'm going to revisit very often.
Yeah. I mean, I was ready to revisit it, but last time I watched it was, I assume, a year ago whenever I wrote that thing. So, but it was one I would pop that in every now and then, every couple of years probably, but it definitely could have been stronger for sure.
Well, like, I just wish that the Dennis Hopper showdown stuff
Yes.
better.
I wish they had written his character better, so it's more of a build up, and then it was more of like an epic duel or something. Granted, a slasher or a horror sequel in the 80s, it's not like you're supposed to expect the world of any of these movies. At least did something different, and it wasn't just a carbon copy of the original.
Well, one thing I'm gonna at least give this film is they talk about the big football game, and a lot of times in movies like this that center around an event in a town going on like that, it's like some generic, but at least they use like the Texas college team in Oklahoma, So it's like I always hate when they make up like fake teams, but this was back in the day when that didn't matter, because nowadays you probably have to pay a bunch of rights and stuff.
Well, you can say Texas and Oklahoma. I just don't think you can say the Texas Longhorns versus what.
But but it was just funny that they, you couldn't do that now. But
yeah, or they probably would want to distance a horror film that's rated X from high school from college football, or maybe not. There's some shady stuff that goes down in college football.
It's just funny when you watch this. There's nowadays, like, there's nothing to this that makes it rated X. Like the gore wasn't obsessive in it, like, or obscene. It wasn't a ridiculous amount.
Oh yeah, I mean, because you watch this now and stuff like those Rob Zombie movies or
hell, the
Wrong
Fly.
Turn or The Fly. Well, The Fly was a different type of.
But still, like, it was more grotesque.
Yeah, it was definitely more disturbing.
But I think it's the context it's into. If it's kind of a hokey slasher horror sequel, then I think that they judge it more harshly than if it's a movie starring Jeff Goldblum and that has a little bit of a budget behind it and a major studio support.
Yeah,
So too, like, is this movie a slasher? There's always a discussion about, is the Texas Chainsaw series a slasher series? I think that it was kind of I don't know, because it came out in the early 70s before the slasher, like before Halloween came out and solidified the rules of the slasher that everyone kind of stuck to. I think it is to some extent a slasher because it's a character or characters killing people with implements and nothing really supernatural about it. So I think that it is a slasher if that term is kind of broad. It doesn't necessarily follow the exact layout of later slasher films, but I think if you very narrowly define it as there has to be characters and then they have sex and drink beer and then they get killed and blah blah blah. I
don't think this is a slasher because to me too, like, the death toll is too low to be I think of a slasher like 5 to 10 people. This doesn't even have they killed one in the beginning.
They killed two guys.
No, because one of them died in a car wreck, so that doesn't count.
Well, they cut the guy's head in two.
Yeah, they cut the guy's head in two, but his buddy died in a car wreck, so they can't take credit for that.
Well,
so you had the one death on screen of him, and then you killed the DJ or the guy that ran the audio board, and then you just had various other stuff. But really, there's only like.
And the rest of it was just the family of the cook and Chop Top and Leatherface.
Yeah,
and
but even with Chop Top, he just fell into a tunnel. And the dad died off screen with the grenade, and then Leatherface got gutted with the chainsaw kinda, and then hit the hammer.
Poor Leatherface too. He was like a sympathetic character because he just seemed like a stunted child or something.
Yeah. And he really, like, aside from the opening scene stuff, like, he spared Stretch. Like we said, had the weird kind of phallic chainsaw moment, but
yeah.
So this is a movie,
and he cut up the guy's face. Let's not forget.
Yeah,
he's not a good person.
No,
but you feel like he was definitely a product of his upbringing.
Oh yeah.
He's not like maybe not inherently evil. Maybe it was his I guess his tactics and tendencies were trained.
But I could see.
But this kind of goes back to like the Rob Zombie sympathetic for the killers.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see you showing this to a group of young people today. Like 17-year-olds a day, they would probably be bored out of their mind.
Oh yeah,
If you showed it to a theater full of if you went to the theater when it showed lights out when we went and saw that, and there was like a lot of the younger audience was there, like the teens who were there or whatever. If you had swapped out that reel with this one, or I guess actually now it's just digital file. If you'd swapped out the file for that with this, people would have been mad, quite mad, because I think it's a different sensibility.
Well, like I said, I think this is just something that, and like action movies are bad about this too, but because your dramas can be kind of doesn't really seem to matter what era they come from, because like people still love Gone with the Wind, you know.
My mom watched that and hated it.
Yeah,
I've never seen it though.
I'm not a big fan.
I'm not a fan, but there's like some people that love that stuff. I think a lot of it's still fault. But my point with this is like, I think horror has one of the hardest transitions of like time periods because it's changed so much in the way everything's done.
You have like people love the stuff they grew up with and hate everything after that.
Yeah,
so
but you
everybody
don't really
in the time.
Yeah, but you don't really get that to a lot of other genres, you know, whereas horror's like, it is like, you know, you got people who love the stuff from the 80s, and that's it, you know.
Because like,
and then
somebody who likes current day big action blockbusters would still enjoy Die Hard because there's not really much that dates the movie, like visually at least.
Yeah, or like, you know,
Predators.
Yeah, like those hold up because the action's action. But with horror movies, it's just the pacing of it. And what is killing people has changed so much that, you know, I just don't see. That's why there hasn't been a whole bunch of slashers made recently, because I just think the way that those work, it just.
Well, and then they have the slasher TV series like MTV Screen that I don't think have worked that well.
No, because you can't do it the TV show.
Well, too, I think to me the best thing about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 are the posters that are reminiscent, like the Breakfast Club and like the John Hughes stuff with like the Leatherface and the family. Like I think that's probably my favorite part of the entire movie, just that poster, because
it's pretty awesome.
Because it gives you kind of a vibe that I don't know the movie necessarily delivers on, but yeah. So
no, it doesn't deliver on it.
They just need way more of the John Hughes soundtrack.
Yes.
In this film, and it could have changed things and upgraded budget, you know.
Yeah, the score for this was something that while watching it, because like we're doing the score for the short film Hazard working it now, and it's like when you watch stuff with and without the score, it feels very different. And watching this, I'm like, the score for this just feels kind of cheesy and kind of
I don't like
generic.
The original score. I did not love for this, so it'd have been great if they would have been able to, replace some of that with some pop music or something at the time.
Southern rock.
yeah, maybe to avoid that. But, even John Hughes-esque, just like, make it, I think it'd be great if it was like full on 80s.
If it went a little bit more in the comedy direction, I think it would have worked better.
Yeah.
You know what would have been awesome? This is just came to me because we're about John Hughes. This would have been phenomenal and made this an Oscar award. John Candy as Leatherface.
Yes.
That would have been so perfect. And there's no better. No, there's
no. I agree. I'm saying, but him cutting off somebody's face as he's dancing to "Stuck in the Middle with You," like from Reservoir Dogs.
Yes, like John Candy, because he has the build. He was built like a Leatherface. He was a big. Because earlier it's just funny because I was watching Uncle Buck, which I think was written by John Hughes or directed. I can't remember.
He wrote it, I believe.
But it's just funny because there's a scene where he goes to the bathroom in the elementary school to pee. John Candy has to like kneel down to pee. And it's just been funny to see the Leatherface do that or something,
Maybe I'll try to do a soundtrack swap and put in, music from John Hughes films into Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. I'll see how that can work because that could amp that movie up. I'll just make a whole cut for us.
To edit it to make it look like John Candy was Leatherface.
Okay. All right.
Do some really bad After Effects stuff.
I'll just add in some scenes from like Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
When he's like in the kitchen and stuff.
Yeah. Like the car scene too when it's like smoking.
Yeah. And then, he's in the kitchen and then he looks over and it's the guy that works at the radio station with Stretch. He's like sitting there without a face.
And then this is a movie too. Tom Savini did the special effects in it.
Yeah.
So one of the million movies in the 80s he was involved with. So so this movie's available to watch for free on YouTube if you want. You can buy the special editions of it or whatever. But
I know we kind of do ratings. So what's your rating for this?
So if you look right now on IMDb, now like I said, these ratings hold no water. I'm just using this as a baseline. It's got a 5.5 out of 10. I think a 6 out of 10 is a very fair rating for this.
Yeah, I would agree that would be fair. Like I feel like that was maybe the temperature for a lot of people. For me, like I go almost to 7. Like I do get bored watching. I do check my phone. So, but at the same time, I love that this movie exists.
Like,
You know what I mean?
I see why it's a cult hit, but
Yeah, it's still
Yeah, I
one
can
of these
definitely
films that
see
I'm
the
like,
cult hit.
I would pick this way over, tons of the other horror sequels that are out there, like a million times over. So just for that alone, it kind of bumps it up a little bit for me. Even if it may not compare to some other films that I may rate kind of similarly, like it has a lot of value to it, I think.
And I'm gonna give this 3 Rob Zombies out of 10 Paul W.S. Andersons.
is that a compliment or a diss or?
It is what it is. You just think of it yourself. That's what I'm giving it.
3 Rob Zombies. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a reject that you can see on the events horizon.
I just think if you're just a person that likes Rob Zombie, which I like some of his stuff, so it's not like sliding it. It's just like if you like that, Phil, this is perfect. This is like your match.
I hadn't watched this in so long that when you finally sit down and watch it, and it's like you kind of remember, it's like, oh, this must have been like a huge inspiration for him, just based on how much tonal similarities there are.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that, but man, when you all said that like before the podcast started, I was like, that's dead on.
I feel like Rob Zombie watches this movie and is screaming the entire time because he's got so many ideas.
He like every time you watch, you get a notepad, got an idea for another movie.
Yeah. And just writing down.
So there's one where like a redneck he kills people.
Do you think he has Saw his family tattooed above his butt crack?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah. So we'll have to see 31 and see how similar that is to this, because I could see the design stuff I've seen from 31 resembling their underground catacomb thing.
Hey, I'm looking forward to that. As far as October horror films, like, hey, it's Rob Zombie. Let's see what he's gonna do. You know what I mean? Like,
I like Rob Zombie's got good intentions. I don't really feel like he's the type that just puts stuff out there to make money. Money's always a factor, but I feel like when he
had a
something,
career before this. He was doing it because he wanted to be a filmmaker.
Regardless of how it turns out, I feel like it's still what he wants to do. Whether or not that's good or not, it just. I'll be interested to watch 31, but it just be funny just to see how much of it. Because, having watched all those films way more recently than this, it's just like William said, when you go back and watch it, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Wait, we need to play like Rob Zombie bingo, and we'll make a list of things we think that could be in 31 based on other films he loves and the things that have been in all of his films.
The tongue thing came from this too. Rob Zombie's like infatuation with the tongues because the Leatherface did it a lot. We didn't necessarily do that, but there's a lot of weird tongue action with the Leatherface.
Yes, through his mask.
Yeah. So
we'll have to do that. Like, so when we do,
all makes sense.
so we'll have to, before we do 31, we'll have to do the bingo on the podcast and kind of make sure everybody's aware of what it is, and then come back at the results once we do the podcast.
We can think of these, the tropes and stuff that we think is going to be on there, and then make individual bingo sheets for each of us and see if anybody can get a bingo while watching it.
All right. So I think that brings our discussion to a close of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
And next week is... very excited to watch Don't Breathe.
Yes, so this podcast, like when it's coming out, the next podcast up will be Don't Breathe, the movie that's probably one of my most anticipated movies, like a genre horror film for the remainder of the year. Because you got like that and like Blair Witch coming up that I'm also excited to see. But I think Don't Breathe is probably the one that I'm most excited for. And all reviews I've seen, I haven't really read too much about it because I tried to avoid spoilers, but now there's so many trailers out for it that have ran before so many movies that I've had some elements spoiled for me that are in the trailers, but hopefully they're holding back all the big stuff. But that'll be the next podcast. I'm very excited to see that.
And we may or may not have an extra guest on there that has never been on here.
Yeah. So
that is not officially part of the site, so that may be fun.
Yeah, we'll see. We're going to try to get some guests on the podcast in the upcoming months, so...
Yeah, and are we going to do a Rob Zombie's Halloween podcast possibly for October, right?
We need to.
We'll need to do that one.
Yeah.
And then,
I feel like there's so
You don't
much
sound
to
too
discuss.
excited about it.
well, I mean, it'll be probably fun to record it, but I have to watch that movie again. So, if you're enjoying the podcast, you can do us a huge favor and go out to iTunes and leave a review. That just helps other people find the podcast, helps us be more visible in the rankings and the reviews. Also, if you're listening via YouTube, you can always leave a comment. We get some really good feedback there and some people who are really into the podcast. So thanks for listening. And you can also find all the stuff we're doing at housebythevideostore.com. We have links there to all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Vine, Vimeo, YouTube. You can find links to all those there and links to all the things we're doing. But mostly just make sure you follow us on Facebook, because that's where we post the most things. Just because Facebook has increasingly made themselves set up in a way where that's the only place to get traction for anything. Because that's just the way the world's going. Everybody's on Facebook more than they're on the rest of the internet these days. So make sure you follow us there, because we'll have updates there. And we'll, like, for the Days of the Dead, where you can see Hazard, we'll share the invite to that event. And if we get Hazard in any other festivals, we'll share any pertinent information there about actually physically attending it. So that's where you can find all the stuff we're doing. And if you want to find us on the internet specifically, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid.
Just search Meta World Derek and you can find me on Logic.
Just go to Google and type it in.
And that's two
Yeah.
T's. That's
it's two T's.
Meta.
I was searching to tag you something on Instagram the other day, and I was like, "What?" And it didn't pop up, so I just typed it in, and it wasn't you. So yeah, two T's.
This one guy's been getting a lot of not a lot, like 2 a year.
He's
Why are
been
these
getting,
people?
He's been getting tagged in every Rob Zombie post I come across.
Why do people
He's like,
love
why does this
us?
guy keep? No, I don't leave any comment. I just tag him in. Mine's at Blevin Sean on Twitter and at Sean2D2 on Instagram.
Yep, so that will bring this. Oh, also you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/HBTVS. If you want to make any monetary donations there, this helps us pay for podcast hosting, site hosting, and as we continue to work on more original content. Like we said, we got Hazard coming out. Sean's working on a segment in that horror anthology, Volumes of Blood, Horror Stories. I have plans to shoot another short in early October. And I know Corey, who's has been on the podcast in a while, he has some ideas for things we're going to try to shoot. So we're going to be trying to put more original stuff out coming up. So that
Okay, real quick, I'm on Facebook and over to the trending there. Oh no, it just disappeared. Okay, one article said Jared Leto. Okay, it's gone, but I'm pretty sure it said Jared Leto says he was tricked into doing Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I saw something about that. But I think people are taking that out of context. And
then, so like I said, I couldn't read. And then another story out of Dayton, Ohio. Man arrested after witness says he was trying to have sex with a van. So there's your late breaking news for August 17th.
Yep, so that will bring this episode of the House by the Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video